So most of you on this session will either know Gordon very well because you're in his dojo, or will know him from regular attendance at these sessions. He's based in Calgary. His dojo is called Calgary Aikido for Daily Life. So I'm very pleased to be associated with that. And most normal years, I get an invite out to go and play with Gordon, which is great. I have a lot of friends there now, and I'm always enjoying my stay there. Gordon, how long have you been practicing Aikido now?
I started Aikido in 1997.
Right.
Do you want to, shall I give a sort of a quick chronology of what happened?
Go on.
Well, my first experience in martial arts was actually doing Kyokushinkai karate in in a dojo in Stratford in the East End of London. And that would have been just when we had, the uptick with Bruce Lee and, everybody wanted to do karate, right? So I practiced there for 3 years. It was an eye opener because it wasn't what I expected the martial arts to be. There was no interest in peace and harmony and reconciliation. It was who's going to be left standing. So I did that for 3 years, and that gave me a really valuable insight into how that maybe not everybody plays fair when they're on the street.
Yeah. So you started.
So that was fine.
So is it true that you started as being 6'6"? It was only after that period of time that you ended up the height you are now.
Exactly, and I had a full head of hair as well. Okay, so I got off the boat in Canada in 1981, and I started doing Aikido through the city of Calgary. It was just a course they offered with Anaba Sensei, who was 6 dan. He was the only Japanese Shihan in Calgary at the time. That was 97, and I was with him for about, I think, 10 years, 11 years, something like that. It was good. We had exposure to visiting Japanese senseis, and it was good. They were his senseis. Kobayashi is probably the best known one. He's an 8th dan. So that was that. And then mid 2000s, I guess 2007, 2008, I switched clubs and joined the Canadian Aikido Federation, which is the dominant organization in Canada. So we practiced out of a municipal leisure center, and I learned a lot from that. They had a very active children's program, 120 kids, I think, at the peak, through different age groups. And, what I learned was how to manage a large group of children in a mat space that was maybe 900 square feet with a concrete pillar stuck right in the middle, I hasten to add, just to add interest to the practice. So I was with the CAF for probably 6 years, something like that. I became aware that there was something missing from my practice, and I had questions, but I needed to go elsewhere to find the answers. So that is when I actually reached out to Paul Linden and went down to see him twice and spent 2 very good sessions actually as a guest in his home. And I recall we would do the things that we did on the mat, and then we'd come back, and Paul made this killer dessert. And I know it had coconut in it, and I can't remember the rest of it, but maybe he can send us the recipe when he gets time. And then the magic words, just as I'm about, well, actually, let me tell you, the very first time I went there, it was 100 degrees in Columbus. And I got off the plane around about 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I made the mistake of wearing long trousers. So Paul picks me up at the airport, and the leading question was, do you want to practice? Well, I know the only answer I could give him was yes. So we go off to his dojo, which is not air conditioned. He's smart enough to be wearing shorts. I'm dumb enough to be wearing long trousers. So I remember we were there till 11 o'clock at night. And I think I lost about 20 pounds through sweat. So thank you for that, Paul. That was my crash diet. So I owe you for that one.
I'm sure you do.
So I think I've been down there twice to see you and had a thoroughly enjoyable time, and your members made me feel very, very welcome. Round about the same time, I went to Seattle to take a seminar which William Gleason, who's with Saotome Sensei, was presenting. And so that was actually great. And if you guys get a chance to see him, I would suggest you try to get to see him. He mixes the Japanese mystery speak with real life Aikido techniques and gives you that connection to what you would do in an Aikido practice. So he's worthwhile. Well, while we were there, I had Sebastian with me, who would have been, let's see, probably about 11, 12 years old. So we decided to take the children's class. And I got to practice with, well, I found out she was 15 years old. And I was a Shodan at the time. And it was abundantly clear that her skill was superior to mine. So I asked her, I said, how long have you been practicing? She said, 8 months. So here I am wearing the black skirt, and she's been doing this 8 months. And there was no doubt in my mind who was the more skilled practitioner. So I thought, well, I got to find out, because either she's blessed with some divine gift, or there's a simpler explanation, which traces back to her instructor, who is, for just in case you're wondering, it's George Ledyard. So I had arranged to go back and see him on another visit. And I spent 2 or 3 hours with him in a one-on-one session. And I pressed him to give me some honest feedback. Now, he is somebody who will give you honest feedback, and you may not like what you hear. But I wasn't really worried about that, because I just needed some clear comments back on what I was doing. So it was only because I pressed him, he came out and just told me, he said, what you're doing is absolute rubbish. And it was a bit of a shock, but he didn't say it in any demeaning way, not at all. He then went on to explain what he saw would be a better way to practice. And I recorded that. So I still have the video, and I refer back to it from time to time. He opened my eyes up to a completely different way to look at Aikido. I will caution you, if you do go and practice with George, you can't be too sensitive. I'll just say that. Okay. I see Molly is laughing, so she probably knows what I mean. Yeah, okay, that's fine. And, he's good. He actually taught the very first seminar in my dojo when we opened 7 years ago. So I'll just say that.
Only because they shut me out of Canada.
Well, I'm coming to you now. So this was all, really in the space of about a year. So my next trip was over to the UK, because my mum was still alive, living in London, and we'd go visit her. And actually, it was through Paul that I was introduced to Quentin. And I remember sitting in the garden of a village pub, drinking beer with him. And I thought, well, this is a really, really good start. I like these omens. Do you remember that? Yeah. And I recall we had at least a couple of one-on-one sessions, which I also recorded and still have. And they were pretty lengthy. And I think you taught some couple of classes that Sebastian and I attended while you were there. So that would have been probably about 7 years ago. We opened up, actually next March, or this coming March, will be the start of year 7 for our club. We have probably 3 seminars. I think one year we had 5, but typically we have 3, sometimes 4 instructors that come in. I will say a big thank you to ADL and to Quentin. And I'm not just saying that because he's here and he's got his finger on the stop button.
But I do.
You do, I know you do. And he didn't write this out for me to say, so this is purely straight from me. I can't think of anybody else who would grant us the freedom to bring instructors in from different Aikido schools. Because we've had one instructor who is very much a purist from the Ki Society. His 6th Dan certificate is signed by Tohei Sensei himself. He started the New Zealand Ki Society and he lives in Canada. So we've had that side of Aikido. We've had George Ledyard. We've had Quentin. I've had Josh Drachman come here from Satomi Sensei's group. And also, some of you may know him in the UK, Yoshi Shibata from the University of California in Santa Cruz. So they typically stay, well, they all stay with us when they come here. And so we kind of feel as if they're members of our family. And some of them actually talk to my wife more than they talk to me. But anyway, they say you can't be too sensitive about this kind of stuff.
You had Paul as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, Paul. Apologies to you. Yeah, Paul has been up here a couple of times at least to present his material. So it's completely different from what you would expect from, let's say, your classical Aikido training. While all that's been going on, and really, in some ways, thanks to COVID-19 and the lockdown and, becoming acquainted with Zoom, I've managed to reconnect with two other friends of mine who are nothing to do with Aikido. One is a Chinese martial artist, and the other one is a very high-ranked ninjutsu practitioner in the United States. So that's been great to reconnect with them because they have certainly been influences in my martial art journey. Absolutely no question about that. So that's my spiel for who I am. Does anybody have any questions or comments before we actually get down to work?
Yes. What did you bring of yourself to the art?
What I brought, Paul, was a lot of questions. I'll be honest with you. And in a completely different context, in my business world, a fellow who I see as a mentor said to me, finding the right answer isn't that difficult. The hard part is asking the right question. Mm-hmm. And so I brought that mindset to Aikido. Now, as you know, that tends to ruffle people's feathers. Yes. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
That's what feathers are for.
Yeah. And the problem with the classical training that I had, let's say, I could never understand why they did the things that they did. Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. And that's why I had to reach out from the sort of the let's say the institutionalized Aikido to try to make some sense of what I was being shown and maybe find my own answers. So that's what I brought to it, was just a bunch of questions.
Gordon?
Yeah?
Oh, hello. Thank you very much. That's very interesting. I was quite struck by what you said about you practiced a Shodan and then you went to another dojo and you practiced with a girl who'd only been doing it for a few months and then discovered that obviously made you reflect on your own practice. But that teacher who spoke to you, obviously quite honestly, and got you to think about your Aikido in a different way and redirect your practice, can you give us a few examples of some of the things that he highlighted to make the change? What was the difference between maybe what you were doing before and what he was asking you to do?
Well, before we got to any techniques, the first thing he stressed was doing what he called connection exercises. So these are done in a physical way. My focus on that area is very much from a biological science point of view. So while I don't dismiss ki, let me just say that, I don't use that word. I would rather use attention or intention or awareness. Now, if you want to call it ki, that's totally fine. I don't really know what that is, so I don't talk about it, right? I don't know what moving from your center means, so I don't really talk about it. And so his name is George Ledyard, is the person that I was referring to. And he is quite a unique character. I'm going to say that. And I say you cannot be sensitive when you go and practice with him. He tries to, And I deliberately pressed him on giving me feedback. So the first thing we did was a series of connection exercises. So this guy at the time was 330 pounds, just to put it in context. And I weigh about 145. So a slight size difference there, right? And we did connection exercises, but in a physical way. So I took my hand and I just put it on his chest. And what he had me do was feel how by moving his body, he could influence me. And I don't mean leaning forward and trying to knock me flat on my back. That's not it at all. He was extremely polite and extremely respectful, right? So I found that interesting. And, you know, he explained that in their dojo, they get into those type of exercises right from day one, before they start teaching an Aikido technique. So that was a big influence on me and got me to rethink, because up to that point, everything I had learned was how to reproduce a shape.
Yeah.
The guy you would know maybe in England that, well, obviously in Quentin's dojo, the focus is very much in that line. Yoshi Shibata is somebody I would also recommend if you get a chance to see him. Paul, again, his work is very much in that area. You know, you do things by using the body. But then with George, we got on to actually simple Aikido techniques that I thought I knew every which way. And I found out I knew nothing about them at all. Like, I mean, zero. So now's, I'm not trying to just, you know, play down what you're asking me, but now is not the time to do it, because we do have a time limit. So maybe if I don't tick Quentin off, he'll invite me back, and then I can show you what I meant in a real way, which, you know, may or may not be helpful to you.
Thank you very much. Sounds like a whole session in its own right. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, it was quite the eye opener, I got to tell you. Are there any other questions, or shall we get cracking on the movement?
Why don't you get cracking with the movement, and then if we have time at the end, we can open it up to questions.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask everybody to stand up if space allows. Don't know if you can see this. I'm just going to change my camera angle here a little bit. Okay. So all we're going to do is just breathe normally through your nose, and then just let the air escape through your mouth. So just a few breaths in, let it go out through your mouth. And as you do that, scan your system, your body, and become aware of any areas of tension that you may feel. So whatever that may be. I mean, in our society, because we sit down most of the time, you know, it's typically in the neck and in the lower back and possibly the knee. But usually it's the lower back and the neck, right? Because we're doing this at our desks all day, or we're doing that on a keyboard, right? Okay, so we're good there. So now what I'll ask you to do is just, the space that you have, just walk around that space and take in a breath, and take 3 steps for the in breath and 3 steps for the out breath. Okay, so just take yourself for a walk. Okay, so we're good there. All right. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take in the in breath on 3 steps, and then we'll hold it for 3, and then we'll let the air out for 3.
The housekeeper, Jamie.
So it's in for 3, hold it for 3, let it out for 3. Just in your own time. If you want to do some whirly twirlies, that's fine too.
They have met you before. Since your socks and shoes on, so it was over in the studio. Oh. We will say hi to her, but then we're going to get out of their way. So they can clean without having to clean around us.
And if you want to walk backwards as well, that's fine too. And you're just becoming aware of what's going on in your body. That's all. No, there's no judgment here. It's whatever it is, it is. Okay, so now what we'll do is the same thing, but instead of 3 steps, we're going to do it as 4 steps. So go ahead, please. So it's in for 4, hold it for 4, let it out for 4. And when you're ready, go to 5 steps.
You need to take a bath? Well, actually, it would probably be good to take a bath today.
I just ask if people are signing in could turn off their microphones, please, because it's distracting for other folks. Thank you.
But It's just
Somehow or the other, I got muted. I'm not sure how that happened, but anyway, I'm back with you guys. I really didn't go anywhere. Okay, so we'll leave it there at 8. I'm not sure if you heard all that, but we did the progression up to 8. Okay, so you feel whatever you feel. Okay, just scan your system, whatever it is, that's what you got. Okay, so now what we'll do, we'll add another component. So you're going to breathe in, you're going to hold it, you're going to breathe out, and you're going to hold it. So now there's four steps to this exercise. Okay, so if 8 was okay, then go to 9, and if 9 is okay, go up to 10, and just observe what you feel. Okay, so it's in, hold it, breathe out, hold it, and then you start the cycle again. Okay, so give it a go in your own time. If you wanted to slowly start jogging, I don't know if that space allows, and I've got the room here to do it. Go, please do that. That's totally fine. Okay, so we're going to start with 8, and then hold it for 8, and then breathe out for 8, and then hold it for 8. And if that's okay, try 9. And walk backwards and forwards, just throw in different movement patterns. And if you can get to 10, great. Okay, so if we just stop there for 1 second, does anybody have any comment? Is anyone feeling distressed? That's the first question. No, everybody's totally calm and relaxed and at peace with the world. Wonderful.
So folks have to unmute themselves if they want to make a comment. For my part, obviously, I think probably if I were measuring my heartbeat, it would have gone up over that exercise. And yeah, I noticed, don't feel the same as I did when I was able to breathe when I wanted to breathe.
Right. Anybody else want to jump in with some thoughts, comments, observations, questions? No? Okay. So what we're doing here is this is kind of the stress vaccine, if you like. You know, we're introducing stress into our body deliberately so that we then become comfortable with that stress. And, you know, often what happens is there's a stressor from the outside and we choose to respond in a particular way, which actually adds to the anxiety. So what we're doing here is by holding our breath, we're somewhat inducing a panic response because you think you're going to pass out because you're not breathing, right? And what you quickly find out is you're not going to pass out. So we do this routine for most of our classes at the beginning. We bow in and then we go into this routine. And then we add other movements to it. So we would start jogging very slowly, okay? Because we're looking to add stress to whatever level you can take to show you that you are not going to become overwhelmed by the stress. Right? So I call this the stress vaccine. This exercise is very, very well known amongst many martial arts. Yeah, I would just say that there's nothing original about what I'm showing you at all. Not at all. Okay, so we've got that. So we've gone through the 4 steps. So now what we're going to do is when we're going to come back from 10 back down to 3. So in your own time, go through that pattern and let's just go 10, 8, 6, 4, 3. Okay, so let's go 10, 8, 4, 10, 8, 6, 4, 3. Go ahead, please. One of the guys in our club actually has 2 cats, and they like to join in the Aikido classes. So
Yes, it does.
I guess they're cool. They're cool cats. Anyway, never mind. Okay, so quick question for you: when we were walking around, how did you place your foot on the ground? Did you put your foot down on the outside or on the inside of your foot? Did you put your foot down flat-footed? So let's see if I can show you. Do you put your foot down like that, or do you put your foot down and push off the ball of your foot?
Yep.
Anybody aware of what they were doing? So you don't have to answer the question. It's just a rhetorical question. You know what you know. So now what I'm going to ask you to do is just don't worry about the breathing and all this other stuff. Just take yourself for a quick walk around whatever the track is that you have there, and just be aware which part of how you place your foot and how you push off the ground. Okay. So now you become aware of how you actually move yourself off the ground, right? And it is no right or wrong. It is whatever it is. Some things could be better than others. But putting it another way, what you've got now is a direct experience of the mind-body connection, right? Because it's your experience, okay? So there are some things, most people that I've asked this question to, as in 99.9%, have no idea how they put their foot on the ground, because they just don't place their awareness on it. So, you know, we use the words awareness, attention, intention a lot, right? That's how we practice. So you can see how you could quickly take this into a standard Aikido movement, right? Last night we did a Boken class. It ended up that way. So we did a very standard Boken kata, but we lay it in with that, the breath, and then we lay it in how your feet connect with the ground. Right? So you can take something that's really simple, mundane, and it becomes full of learning. But you just have to be aware of I came back to what I said at the beginning. The answer isn't difficult. It's asking the right question. Okay. So does anybody have some comments as to what we just did? No?
No, I do.
Paul, okay, go ahead.
Well, actually, I did learn something, Gordon, which was that in the past, I've always concentrated on what I was doing with my front foot. I realized that actually what I'm doing is pushing off with the back foot.
Okay.
So it worked for me.
Right, so you become aware of that, and that may be beneficial in some circumstances, and it may not be. So that would be something to explore when you do either you do a paired practice in Aikido, or you do, well, we know it as Tai Sabaki, right, where you're doing the foot movement. Some kind of Arimi Tenkan is how we would know it, and just become aware of that. And, does that help you do the movement? Or does that increase the stress in your, say, your back or your knees? I don't know. These are all things to, to think about. There are little props that we use to help us with these. So we use things like a basketball or a volleyball or a football, soccer ball, not American football, a soccer ball. And if you can really, if this is available to you, what we find particularly helpful is to get yourself a pair of spiky balls. So that's what I meant by spiky balls, in case anybody was, I have no idea what you were thinking about.
This is what Alex like all the time. It's just, he can't help himself.
So I got these on Amazon. I'm not sure what they were, $6 or something like that. But anyway, I don't know what you were thinking about. I really don't.
Don't ask.
Don't ask, I won't tell.
If you knew me better, you'd know I had my tongue in my cheek when I said that.
Our friends say that he's got an automatic smut generator, and he doesn't even have to say anything. He just laughs, and then,
My kind of guy. I think we're going to be good friends on it. Okay, so if we're okay with that, we'll go to the next exercise. So I'm just offering these ideas. In that movement pattern that I showed, there are so many variations that you can introduce. So we would, introduce more of a physical movement, and that could be, a squat, right? Or you could go down and do a push-up. You could do a sit-up, and you could do combinations of that. So just very quickly, I'll just put forward one idea, and you can do this in a confined space, right? So here I am sitting in Sensei, and I do a dive. So I just dive, I roll on across, back onto my stomach, and I come back into Sensei, right? But I'm very aware of my breath, and I'm very aware of where the tension is in my body as I do that. So I did that in a space that's about 4 feet wide. And this section of the mat is 6 feet across. So it's a tiny space. So you could do that same breathing exercise, but with that physical movement. You could add something like this. You could turn onto your back, do a sit-up, roll onto your stomach, and come and do that. So you can see you're just limited by whatever space you have and really whatever you want to do. And if you've got a shoulder injury, then some of these things may not be possible, right? Okay.
Gordon, have you got any adaptations that you could offer about Molly and Vitaly?
I do. Okay. Well, we can all do this. So what I would ask you, so Molly and Vitaly, exception for just this very first 15 seconds, and then we'll get to the routine that you could do. I just ask everybody to stand up, and if we do a very common Aikido movement, which we know is a Rimi Tenkan, and if you want to throw in the hand exercise, the hand raising, which is really for cutting with a bokken, right? So just do that and become aware of how easily or not you're doing it. Are there areas of stress and tension in your body? Okay, so that's fine. So they just need to do 3 or 4. It's not a big production. Okay. So now we're here. So with this movement, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tense the upper half of my body as I breathe in for a 4 count. But I'm going to move the bottom half of my body. So it'll look something like this. I'm breathing in, and from the waist up, it's super tense as I breathe in for 4. And the lower half, I do my Elvis impersonation, right? So I'm doing that. Right? And then after I finish the in-breath, I just let everything slowly relax for 4. Okay, so do you want to just do it with me if you would, please? So I'm going to breathe in for 4, and don't be worried about looking foolish. It's okay, we all look foolish, so it'll be fine. Yeah, so we're breathing in for 4, and it's tensing the other upper half as I do the hip twirling, swirling, all that good stuff, right? And then let it out for 4. Okay, and again. And just one more time. So I'm just breathing in. Your hands could be by your side. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so then what we'll do is we're going to tense everything up from the waist down, and we're going to do the whirly swirly thing from the waist up. You don't have to go fast, because if you go fast, you're actually introducing tension into the exercise, and we're trying to do the exact opposite. So just go slowly. So here we go. So we're breathing in for 4, and I'm going tense from the waist down, and just slowly. You can see how slow my hand movements are, right? And I'm moving my shoulders. And then let it out for 4, and let the tensions move out from your body there. Okay. And again. So breathe in for 4. Tighten everything up in the lower half. Yeah. Walk like an Egyptian or something. No, I'm not sure. Okay. Okay, and just one more time, please. So you could kind of do this sitting at your office chair. Hopefully there's nobody else there. Otherwise, these men in white coats will come and take you away. All right, so now what we'll do is we're going to tighten the whole of the body up on a 4 count. So everything is really, really tight. And then just let the tension out for a 4 count. Okay. So now go back to the Taisabaki we did a couple of minutes ago, and just scan yourself and be aware of how, if any, that feels different to what it feels like now. Okay, so just go ahead. So it's the same body movement. Okay, and it feels what it feels. So you're not trying to be good at this thing at all. It's just whatever you feel, you feel. Some comments then before we move on. Did anybody find anything different, or aware of anything different, or just the same? I know Bruno, it'll always be the same with Bruno, so I don't have to ask him, but for everybody else.
The body felt quite lighter now.
Yeah. And the more energetic the movement, so say we're doing myokemi. So myokemi for us is a forward roll. I know different Aikido lineages use different terms, but we would know myokemi is a forward roll. That's where for me, is where I notice the biggest contrast. And same with the shirokemi. That's where I notice the bigger contrast. There seems to be more energy to it, and it seems, as you said, Dimitri, lighter and softer, right?
Yes.
Because by introducing tension and letting it go, we're releasing, it was gradually taking away the stress in our body. So that would help us, for what we're doing here. It would help you in an Aikido practice, but it would also help you when you're walking around and going to the supermarket, right? Especially when there's somebody really irritating at the checkout counter in front of you, who can't make up their mind what they want to buy. I say that somewhat with a joke, but I also say it seriously as well. Okay, so hopefully that would help, if you're tight or you're sitting at an office desk, okay? So here's another one we're going to look at. Again, we're going to walk around, and you can just walk forward and back. And what I'll ask you to do is to breathe into your collarbone. So you're taking really short breaths. You're just going to breathe into your collarbone. So it's a very restricted breath. So go ahead, please. So I'm breathing in for 3, and I'm letting the air out for 3. I breathe into my collarbone, and then I let the air out from my collarbone through my mouth. Okay, and if you want to do some whirly twirlies, I mean, that's fine. All right, so now we're going to move from the collarbone to where the ribs join the breastbone, right there. Yeah, so we're just going to breathe into that space, and then for 3, and then we're going to let the air escape for 3. So go ahead, please. And you just got your attention and your awareness in that spot where the ribs connect to your breastbone. Okay. All right. So now we'll take it from there and we'll go down to our lower belly. Okay. So same exercise, count of 3, down to the lower belly, right there. Give it a go. Okay, so now you feel whatever you feel when we do the exercise, right? It's your right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to breathe into the collarbone, but we're going to feel like we're breathing out from the lower belly. So you're breathing into the collarbone and breathe out from the lower belly, and just scan your system and see what changes are happening internally. Okay, so give it a go, please. So now breathe into the mid stomach here of your chest, and then breathe out from the lower belly. So you're breathing into the middle, breathing out from the lower belly. Give it a go. And the out breath is, it's like you're following the breath. It isn't that you're trying to push the air out. You don't want that. That's actually not very good for you. So you're kind of just letting the air escape on its own, and you're following it. That's all you're doing. Okay, so now let's change it, and we'll breathe into the lower belly, but we're going to breathe out from the midsection. So into the lower belly, breathe out from the midsection. Give it a go. And then when you're ready, breathe into the midsection and breathe out from the collarbone. So it's into the midsection, breathe out from the collarbone. Okay, any comments, thoughts, observations so far?
For something we do every minute of every day, it sure can seem complicated when you start looking at it.
Yeah. And
Well, we
I can
just
tell that mischief in him. He's become a total mischief. Yes.
Well, who, me, he says?
No, not
me?
I know.
No, I don't. I'm just taking Alex's part. Yeah, we got to do some male bonding here, brother. Come on. So, how did you feel when you did that? Which did you find the easiest? Breathing into the collarbone, the midsection, or the stomach? Or which did you find the most distressing, or more distressing? Any comments?
The most unnatural for me personally was breathing into the collarbone.
Yeah, same for me.
I'm so used to using my whole thorax and abdomen for breathing that it was a real, it made you think about it.
Yeah.
And I had a similar experience. On top of that, after a while, it was started almost like a slight lightheadedness feeling.
Right. Yeah, and go ahead, Paul.
I found the whole thing fascinating. It reminds me of two things. One, the more things don't change, the more they remain the same. There's a million ways of doing this, but I've never seen this. This is very interesting. And this also reminds me of Sanchin Kata. Are you familiar with that?
The Zanshin Kata?
Sanchin Kata in karate.
No, I'm not. I may know it by a different name, but yeah.
It's breathing and tension exercise. It's very, very interesting. You've invented something which is a totally different approach to the same thing. Very nice.
Thank you. Well, these exercises and variations of them are widely used by other martial artists, and I find particularly the Chinese martial artists seem open to that. Anyway, I don't want to get into all that right now, but these aren't my brilliant ideas. Trust me. We've developed them and added other things and taken things away, because what I just showed you, we're actually going to get into the next section here very quickly if we could. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is, you're walking along, I don't know, you're coming out of a room, say, and imagine that there's somebody standing outside the door who means you harm, and you don't know they're there. So all I'm going to ask you to do is to breathe in very quickly into the collarbone. So just go ahead, please. You're just walking along, and then taking your breath into the collarbone. And scan yourself and feel what that does to you emotionally and psychologically. So that's good. When we're startled, right, we typically take a short breath and we breathe into the collarbone, because that's the fear response. So all these breathing exercises, from at least the way that I see it, is you can give into the fear response, or it's not even giving in, you just become paralyzed, right? So some people call it the limbic system response. It's fear, flight, or freeze, whatever you want to describe it as. But you do have a choice as to how you deal with it. Your response is, your reaction, initial reaction is how you react. That's human beings, right? But then you have a choice as to what you do next. So you can either let this thing control you, or you can start using some of these breath exercises, and there's millions of them. Well, not millions, but there's certainly dozens of them, to actually regain control of your emotional and mental state. So it's, psychosomatic and psychotic, I should say, yeah. So the physical response controls the breath, but then the breath influences the physical response, right? You know, and people say, oh, that person over there, they really, really stress me out. Well, they are who they are, but you have a choice as to how you respond to them, right? So for me, you know, in my business world, I find these techniques are very helpful, especially if I'm in an uptight meeting and it's not going very well. So the thing's either going to escalate, in which case, you know, everybody walks away as enemies, or you can try and find some kind of common ground where at least you can agree on some of the issues, right? And then maybe move forward from that. So
Gordon, to be clear, what you're saying is that maybe in a stressful business meeting, you might just focus on your breath for a few seconds and then respond.
That's it exactly. And so the response you've seen by us breathing into these three areas, if you make a conscious decision to breathe into your lower belly, that helps to calm things down. And it also buys you time before you open your mouth and start speaking off at the person on the other side of the desk from you, right? So it's a practical application. It's not just some wugga wugga type exercise that you would do in an Aikido dojo. I do this all the time. I wrote them down. We have probably 20 different breath exercises, and I'm sure we're going to add to them. And I do them when I go for a walk. So we live by a river over here, which Quentin is familiar with, and Paul as well. I do them going for a walk down by the river. I do them in meetings all the time when I'm talking to people. I do them, you know, just before Christmas, I had quite a difficult phone conversation with a client of mine. And there were words that I wanted to say, and I didn't say them because I just went into the breath exercise while this person was talking. And then the meeting actually ended up really, really well. Okay. So there were other things that I had, but maybe we'll just save those for another time. I think I'd really, you know, like to hear from people who sat in on this session, what their thoughts, observations, and so forth.
Okay, what I'm going to do, Gordon, is I'm going to go through the room and I'll come to your lot last because they've done this the most. So Dimitri, if I can start with you, if you'd like to unmute.
Yes.
She's taking some few seconds and breathing before she responds, Gordon.
Uh-oh, that's ominous. Maybe I should duck or put on a hard hat.
No, I just think it's really, there's so many possibilities in breathing. And I think it's this experimentation with breathing and what it does to the body and to the mind and to the feeling. It's really wonderful. And there's so much to it. I can imagine this is just really an introduction to what you're doing. It's really wonderful. Personally, from all the different kind of breathings that you demonstrated, everything was just fine. What I found a little stressful for my body was breathing in from the belly, from hara, from tantien, and breathing out from the middle part. Breathing in from the belly and breathing out from the middle part. Somehow this was a little stressful because while when we breathe out from the belly, it really grounds the body, and it apart from that, all the other kinds of breaths, even breathing from here, breathing from the collarbone, it gives a really big sense of openness and spaciousness, but then it takes a little bit of your grounding away.
Okay, thank you, Dimitri.
So maybe, sorry, if I could just something to what Dimitri's comment about where she felt the most, anxiety, if you like. It could be that you said when you breathed it into the lower belly and breathed it out through the midsection, that caused you the most anxiety.
Right.
It could be that your body is not familiar with that breath pattern. So all we're doing is taking the body to a place. We're going from here to over there. And the body's saying, well, I don't know what all this is about. So I don't like this. And I want to come back to what I know. And I'm saying to you, you got to override the body and say, no, let's just hang out here for a bit. We're not going to do anything stupid. but let's just hang out. And does this really present a threat to us? So just, I would suggest maybe just try the exercise whenever you can, do it before you go to bed or when you wake up in the morning, whatever. And until your system becomes comfortable with these different, these different movement patterns.
Okay, well, working my way through around the room as I see them. Joanna, you're next.
Hi, thank you, Gordon, for the exercise. I have actually two questions. First, on the first exercises of breathing, my exhale took longer. So just like in 4, when I breathe in 4, hold for 4, and breathe out in 4, I feel like I need more time to exhale. Maybe when I hold too much the air inside. I don't know, keep playing on that. And just like Dimitra, I experienced that it's just like breathing in waves with my lower abdomen and breathing out from the upper part. It's just something hard on breathing out. So it didn't blend with the breathing in and the breathing out. But also just like in the beginning when I was breathing in with my collarbone, when I breathe out with my hara, it was, I really wanted to expel all of this compressed air breathing in like here. So when you said just don't push the air outside with your lower hara, it was kind of, no, I really want to expel that thing out because it's not good for me. So just working with that. And then I just, okay, let me just release this with flowing and kind. So something that I experienced.
Well, again, I just repeat what I said earlier. It's because your body is not familiar with this space, and it says, I don't really like this because I don't know what all this is about. So let's get back to what I know. And so what I'm asking is, take your body to that place that's not familiar, because what you will find is, we did this as a breath exercise and kind of a stress management type. That's what this was about. But this will add another dimension to your Aikido practice. And so the rowing exercise, the Funagoki Undo thing, right? So you see them do it and they do this and then they'll add the sound effects, right? And every Aikido school's got their own sound effects. Well, that's great. But all they're doing is a movement pattern. How do you know you can really do it? Well, the only way you know you can really do it is if you've got an uke that clamps down on you and stops you extending and stops you pulling back, right? Because that's the only way you'll know you can do it. With this breathing exercise, certainly the bit about breathing out from the hara or tantien, whatever you want to call it, you'll find that'll add another dimension to doing that simple exercise. And what looks like magic is it's pure biological science. So you see the guy, put his hand on the master's chest and the stomach, and then he gets pushed back, right? So really, it looks fake. It looks fake, and it may be fake. I don't know, because I'd have to put my hand on every teacher's chest to find out. But the ones who can really do it, they are using basically the diaphragm to cause that to happen. Now, they may not be aware that they're using the diaphragm, and they'll find other language to describe what they're doing. But that may not be actually what they're really doing. So what I'm offering you is a physical way to do some of these exercises that seem magical, and they're not. They're just biological science. Sorry, I didn't mean to give you a lecture. Sorry.
No, but it was pretty interesting because it's not right or wrong. It's just different ways. I might find somebody on the mat or on the street that I will breathe in with my collarbone, and I have other layers of responses to breathe out differently and different combinations. So it's pretty interesting.
It's quite freeing, isn't it? Because it shows you have a choice as to what happens, but you have a choice as to how you respond.
Yes, thank you very much.
I think for all the teachers here, we'll all have seen when we've shown a technique and you have your way of doing it, and then most of the people revert to doing it the way that they do it rather than trying out the new way. So that's very interesting. John, I know you've been working with Gordon quite a bit on Saturday classes. So do you have some observations you want to give us?
Yes, I really miss a Saturday lesson, and I've done quite a lot of these breathing exercises now, and it's something that I never really focused on before, and it's greatly improved my coordination. Even tonight, I feel as if it's improved even more with the connection with the mat surface as I'm walking. So great for me.
Fantastic, thank you. Andrew. You look like you're in a museum, mate.
Oh, that's better. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
I just a question. You haven't touched on reverse breathing. Do you do anything on that?
There are an almost unlimited number of variations of these exercises, but yes, there's just too many things to cover. So in a typical Aikido class, we would look at one breath movement pattern, because that's all you have time to do, right? But yeah. So the answer to your question is yes, and really it's unlimited, the movement patterns you can come up with.
Okay.
So I don't think I've really answered your question, but maybe another time we can look at it.
Alec and Liz, one of you can speak for the two of you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I found it really interesting doing those exercises because it took me a little bit back to my own past in martial arts as well, because now I do Aikido and yoga, and we do a lot of breathing exercises, but they're a little bit more static, aren't they? You're sort of sitting there in Sensei, doing your whatever the form the breathing exercise is, and you sort of get progressively more Buddha-like, and you're terribly dignified and static, you know. And actually being made to do it on the move again is a different experience.
Your sound's just
Which is, what are you doing? Aren't we supposed to be sitting in Sensei doing it, you know? But where it took me back to my past is that a very long time ago, I used to do Shotokan karate. And one of the things that I was taught is that, and did quite a few years actually, is that when you're doing your kicks and punches and any movements, they're taught a very disciplined pattern of breathing with it. So as you kick and as you punch, you're breathing out, you know, from your hara, and you're going into that absolute tension, that fraction of a second before you hit something, yeah? And it was doing your exercises again, it reminded me why that worked and why it generated the power that it did. It came as a bit of a shock to me because my body had sort of, you know, thought, oh, I've given up doing that. You're doing it again. Heck. But that's how I reacted to it. Anyway, I found it very, very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Molly.
No, Alec hasn't said anything yet.
No, you spoke for us.
Did I? What, you too?
Molly, do you want to unmute? Need to unmute, my dear. Here we go. Words of wisdom.
I am challenged by all these. So anyway, breath. It's like I love it, right? I had made the comment that life is bookended by the inhale and the exhale, and you know, as I've practiced breath and all these different patterns, this is new to me, Gordon. This pattern, and so as a seated person, drawing those patterns into what goes on in my body because I'm not walking around, right? It's interesting. It's interesting. Breathing up in here, it's like that fight or flight thing, man. It's like I find that I could go there, but it's going to sound maybe California woo-woo. Having died, right? In this body, having left this body and then come back to it, the importance of breath, the idea that any movement that's not riding on it is empty in a certain way. And I find that I'm immersed in being breathed by the breath that's bigger than this idea of my container. So in these breathings, I'm like, even in this moment, the way I can feel all of you in this picture right now is because I feel like we're breathing together, even though you're far away. So anyway, I appreciate these journeys through these different patterns, because really, this thing, it's how we're even here. Because without it, we're not.
Right.
Just not. Anyway.
Thank you, Molly. Jamie.
Hi everyone. Hi Gordon, thank you for those. That's really interesting. I had an accident about three and a half months ago, and my jaws were wired shut for almost a month, and the breathing experience was so profound because I couldn't breathe at all through my mouth. So it was kind of like having half of it taken away. And I was nervous the whole time that I might get even a stuffy nose, because that was the only way I could breathe. And I remember going out on the porch one night. I went out every night. One night, for some reason, things opened up enough, and I tried to open my lips a little bit more, and I guess I got a little air into my belly to use more than just up here. And it was incredibly calming. And I felt like, you know what, I think I'll make it through the rest of the time if I can just breathe this much. And it was so powerful, all about the breath. And then that didn't last, unfortunately. And it was so intertwined with anxiety, which we talk about, but in that situation. And I remember doing some meditations where, all meditations start with breathe into your belly and take a deep breath. And I would feel kind of angry. Molly, I wanted to talk to you about this, what it feels like. I felt like I was disabled at my breath, and it's like, I can't take a breath in my belly. It's not happening. It's not working. And all I had was kind of up here. So anyways, walking around and doing, breathing into my collarbones, I was just hating it, quite honestly. I really didn't like, excuse me, I had to, kind of go down lower. And so, it was really interesting, fun to play with different combinations and patterns of that. Also, just another aside, I was thinking about COVID is just a complete disabling of your breath, and how terrifying that is. And look at the people dying because they can't breathe. So the thing, we say these words, and to really get them at such a visceral level is so powerful.
Very true. Thank you, Jamie.
So thank you.
Paul?
Couple of thoughts. One, there's a hospital in New York that did a research study. They found that when people stop breathing, they die. So, the other one,
that's like Arnold Palmer said that something about 100% of putts that don't make it to the hole don't go in.
That's true.
Yes.
And more than that, possibly. The other thing, when I first started messing around with this stuff, I was projecting intention through the body without coupling the breath. So I think you can decouple them, but it's a very powerful thing to couple them. And what else? Yeah, when you described the strike with the bracing, I've had an intuition for a long time that it's not necessary to brace. And I found the 9th Dan, Okinawan karateka, who said, don't brace, just extend. Don't pull it back. He's doing extension, gentle strike with power that you wouldn't believe.
Yes, that's exactly what we learnt from doing Aikido later. Exactly, that's exactly right. Yeah.
And that not so crazy. Some other people have found the same thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is very fascinating, Gordon, because you're monkeying around with coupling the breath and sending it in different directions through the body.
Finn, I'm going to come to you now. And now, Finn's a musician. I'm interested to know whether any of this would sort of mesh in with what he does there.
Absolutely. That was really it's really helped clarify and point out some obvious connections that I should have made long ago. Thank you very much about tension and release and how that relates to music in particular. It's a fundamental connection between this Aikido and music and lots of other things I'm thinking about. Just the dynamics of everyday life. And yeah, I was touched by what you said, Jamie, about the privilege of each easy breath. And yeah, and people say, just relax, just breathe. But then we think, well, how do you breathe? And this gives us some options to experiment and just to try and compare and contrast and make sense of our own breath. And it's been really helpful. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Finn. Linda, you're next. Yes.
Oh dear. I didn't know we were going around in a circle. Well, I skipped most of this. It was interesting watching, but I have supraventricular tachycardia, and one of the things that fires it off is that adrenaline pump from holding my breath. And that's a bad habit I've been in, is sort of a central apnea kind of just failing to breathe. And I think that's what might have brought it on in the first place. So so I don't do this. I avoid holding my breath. My focus tries to be on allowing breathing, which is more a challenge for me. I can actually kind of feel, I did like the first one where we did a count of 3 and I felt it. And it was like, no, I'm done, not doing this. But I'm doing a lot of reading. Yeah.
Imagine, rather than the idea of holding your breath, what I find is I'm actually suspending it. There's a level of suspension, and that allows suspension to happen. And it's not this contracted.
Right, not holding.
It's not contracted.
But even so, even if it's not that, like even when I'm just unconscious of it and I'm, focusing on something I'm doing and I just fail to breathe for a little while, I'm not even thinking about it, that bodily causes an adrenaline spike, which can get my heart rate going.
You said it was interesting to observe. What did you observe?
Oh, I like the progression. I like the working with moving, I often use steps to count. I'll use steps to that kind of walking exercise, very similar to what I've done in trying to memorize things like counting for the 31 Jo kata. Actually, I have a blog post on how to count to 31 in Japanese. Something like with rhythm and under pressure, because it's different from just knowing how to count. You have to do it. So I'll use the walking like that. Every 4th step, 1, 2, 3, ichi, 1, 2, 3, ni, like to bring that pressure on for a timing. And then once you get really, really good at that, take it down to 3 and 2 and 1. But when you start falling apart, back off. And, I could see that same application here is if you can do the breathing exercise for 3 and 4 and 5, and then it's like, that's a bit much. Okay, maybe down to 4 and play with that for a little bit. So anyway, there's, a lot of commonalities with things I've experienced.
May I make a brief comment? If you
yes.
want to talk to me later about it, there's something I've experienced I call seamless breathing. You watch for the change between the in and the out, and you just don't have any. You just go in the same direction, very smooth. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Vitaly, I know it's very late where you are and you don't want to wake your family up, but is there anything you would like to offer? But you'll need to unmute. Vitaly? Or has he frozen? No, you're there. Vitaly, anything you would like to say, but obviously you might whisper.
I just wanted to say that it's pretty late at my house and everybody's asleep already, so I can't say a lot. So what I want to say is that I've been to several classes of Gordon. It's really wonderful, and it's another thing you can work with is your breath, and especially if you combine with your imagination when you can't walk actually, but you can imagine that and work with these two things. It's really great, and it gives you another perspective of what you can do with your body.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Seb, as a regular practitioner with Gordon, I'm going to leave the last word to you. I might let Gordon say something, but I'm going to leave the last bit of feedback to you.
Yeah, so I actually woke up about half an hour before the meeting, and I was awake, but not really alert. And once we worked through the square breathing, I felt a lot more aware and I guess a lot more alert.
So you're doing this regularly. How do you find it helps your practice overall, the whole practice?
I think my dad actually mentioned this, where sometimes before we start the square breathing, we'll do a couple of myochemies just to get sort of a baseline. And then after we do the square breathing, we'll do some more myochemies. And generally they feel a lot better. They feel smoother. It feels like you have more control and you can do them more quickly if you want to.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Gordon, I will leave the last word to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Quentin. I'll make it really brief. This was just, a very short introduction to this. And, Paul talked about no real distinction between the in and out breath. So it feels like it's one continuous breath. There's an infinite number of patterns that you can explore, and say you're just limited by your imagination. But you can do these outside of an Aikido dojo. And to be honest with you, that's where I find them the most useful, is in everyday situations. So that's it. Just one quick plug. If anybody would like to join our classes, you're more than welcome to do that. We practice a movement type class on Monday evening, and then we do an Aikido class Wednesday, and then Saturday morning. So the times, we're at, right now it's 1:20 in the afternoon where I am, so you can figure out what the time difference is. The Saturday morning class is the one that seems most accessible, and that starts at 9:30 in the morning. Our classes are 40 minutes. You don't need a huge amount of space. This is fine. You can wear normal street clothes. I've got sweatpants on here. We typically wear our gi in the dojo, but just feel free to sign in. You can send me an email. You can contact Quentin, and we'll get you the Zoom link to sign in. And we'd love to have you there. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Can I make a quick comment? Next Sunday, the 17th, I'm doing a workshop in Spain. If anybody wants, you can call me for information.
Okay, so final word of the evening, other than thanking you, Gordon, I think the feedback shows that people found it very interesting, is just to promote Jamie's session next week. She'll be looking at somatics and holistic practice. I think it'll mesh in very well with this, but also much of the other work that we've done. So I think it'll be very rich, and I look forward to seeing you then. I will thank you all for coming as always. Happy New Year. Molly, did you want to find
Happy New Year. Pop this in here too. Tomorrow, Jeremy and I are doing a class in, it's coming in from France. And if anybody wants I can put the Zoom link up there.
Yeah,
it's our time here, 11:15 in the morning.
Molly, why don't you put it in the messenger group, because then it'll be there as a record for people to see.
Okay.
It's a good idea for you too, Gordon, actually. Jamie?
Yeah, I just want to say next week we'll be talking about, of all things, I, he, and do. Okay, and we'll really be exploring them in some depth and some different ways, and also really how that relates to our lives and the world, because we can see Aiki and Do, they're happening every day. We're part of it, and they're happening in our individual lives, and they're happening, as we can see here in America, they're happening in our social life, in our societal lives, and in the world. So we're going to be talking about a lot of things next week.
Sounds good.
And doing some stuff.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheerio, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Very interesting.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.